Hey everyone, I want to start sharing some of the email questions that I get from people from all over the world. I get lots of questions about soap making, but also about sourdough bread making and whole grain sourdough. And this is something that I really wanted to start up on both of my YouTube channels to help you all out, because some of the questions I get are so good. They're really worthwhile sharing, and I thought they might be easy videos for me to do too as well, to kind of fill in the gaps, because sometimes life gets in the way and it takes me a while to get to doing recipe videos. So I want to start off with this great question from a man called Vern Hembley, and Vern is in Calgary, Alberta in Canada. Vern and I have had quite a lot of email contact since this first one back in October 2021, and he's had some great questions, and he's given me permission to share his name and his question. So, Vern's question. Hi Vern, by the way, if you're watching, I finally got to doing it. It says, "G'day from Calgary, Alberta. Love the videos, Ellie, and I really enjoy making your sourdough recipes. My question is in regard to sourdough starters. What difference does changing the starter ratio make in the process? Does making the starter 1 to 2 to 2, as in the ratio of starter, water, flour, or 1 to 3 to 3, change anything? Is there a reason why you would increase the ratio from 1 to 1 to 1? Thanks so much for your time, Vern Hembley." So I gave Vern an email reply to this, and most of my reply focused on really like the flavour of the sourdough starter, and that is one main reason why I always feed my starter with a very small proportion of old starter to loads more, like comparatively, of fresh flour and fresh water. So I don't feed my starter with a 1 part, by weight, 1 part flour, 1 part starter, 1 part flour, 1 part water. Mine's probably more like 1 part starter, 8 or 10 parts flour and 10 parts water. I don't actually know because I don't measure it that precisely, but I use just a tiny bit of starter, like a teaspoon's worth, and then feed that up with a lot more fresh flour. So in my email reply to Vern, I pretty much explained that the main reason for me is the flavour. If you feed your starter with lots more fresh flour and water, overall it will be fresher, because you're using just a small amount of the old starter, which will be stronger in flavour. It'll have more sourness to it and more developed flavour. You're feeding that with a lot more fresh flour and water, which basically kind of waters down the strength of the flavour in the starter. So it will be more mild and kind of more fresh, really. But there are a couple of other reasons why I would do that too, and why personally I do that. I'm not saying at all that this is the right way to do it. There are so many ways. Honestly, there's no right or wrong way. This is just why I do it. But the other reason why I do that is because of my maintenance method. So I don't like sour breads. So the flavour aspect of it, that does suit me as well. My starter's not too sour. But I also, as you probably know, I do this kind of really lazy method where I keep my sourdough starter in the fridge. So after I feed it, I let it kind of rise up and activate a bit, and then I just put it in the fridge for my next bake. I don't refeed it again before I use it. I just take it straight out of the fridge. So my thinking is that if my starter is super fresh, because I've just fed it with lots more fresh flour and water compared to the original amount of starter, so a really low ratio of starter compared to flour and water, then more of that whole amount of starter is going to be fresher. And I try and get it in the fridge before it really over ferments. I just kind of let it activate sort of enough, I let it sort of just start to get bubbly basically, and then I put it in the fridge. And then when I come to bake my next loaf of bread, usually about, 4 days later, that's about the frequency with which we bake our bread, It's pretty good. It's still pretty fresh, and yeah, it's not too strong flavored, and it works really well. The other thing to bear in mind with this is that the amount of old starter that you have in your refreshment mixture, that will determine how quickly the new levain or the new amount of starter will ferment. If you are refreshing your starter before you make the loaf of bread, which loads of people do, and I think ideally, like, that's the best way to do it if you've got the time. I just like the minimalist approach. And the breads that I make with my old starter from the fridge, I am perfectly happy with them. So I don't need to add extra steps and processes because I'm already happy with what I've got, and it's nice and easy for me. So you can tweak these ratios depending on the outcome you want in terms of flavor, but also the timing. If you want to feed your starter the night before and it's really hot weather and you want that to ferment out on the bench top overnight, then use a smaller amount of original starter. If you want to make it really fast, then use a larger amount of original starter and just feed that with, you know, the equal amount weight of flour and water. So you can play around with this. The method that I use, like that scrapings kind of method, it just works really well for me. It keeps my starter nice and fresh, even though I store it in the fridge, and it's still got enough oomph left in it to raise my bread. I think that's all. I think that's about all that I can say on that topic. I don't have any great scientific explanations for it, but that's my thinking, and that understanding has served me well in my approach, my very simple old starter from the fridge method that I use. So hope that helped. And if you've got any questions that you would like me to answer, just send me an email through the contact page on my website, and I will get back to you. And if it's a question that I think others can benefit from, I'll share it here as well. Thanks again to you, Vern, for your very kind emails that you send me. I know you checked up on me just today about the flooding in Brisbane. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And yeah, take care, everybody. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.